We started this new channel called the Women Truckers Network. My name is Desiree, and I have my own channel, Trucker Desiree, on YouTube. And I've been telling a story over the last few years about my personal student truck driver horror story, and I just resumed telling it after a break. And I get so many emails from students still having the same problems that I did. They're confused, they don't know what they're getting themselves into. And so we started this Women Truckers Network channel to start covering some other topics from other women truckers. And one thing that we always get asked, that we always get emails for, is how do I choose a CDL school and a training carrier? And you know, we have such limited time to help students that are prospectively going to get into the industry find good information. If you Google trucking carriers or trucking or CDL school on the internet, there's just so much stuff. You don't even know where to start to go through it. And a lot of it is total scams and lies, and they just mislead you, because the first thing you should know about entering CDL training is there's a lot of scams. And there's a lot of people making commission to get you to get involved in CDL school, and they don't care if you become a truck driver. They only care that you either get a student loan or get a workforce voucher or get something to pay them so that they can get their commission and they can get their numbers for sales, and you'll go to CDL school, and they don't care if you pass or not. The next problem is the CDL school is barely going to teach you enough to drive around the block. You're not going to learn anything. So the prices fluctuate anywhere from $2,500 up to $10,000, and you really are not learning that much more. But you are learning a lot of things that it takes a while to digest. So we always suggest that you look for a longer CDL course, something, if you can find it at your local community college, that's like 8 weeks is preferable. I've been finding a lot of the community college courses are being suspended. I'm not sure why, but that should be your first stop. The next thing that you should think about is seeing how you're only going to get these very, very preliminary skills from this CDL training. Regardless, you're going to have to go to a training carrier afterwards, which means you have to live on a truck with somebody that you don't know. And some of these trainers are good trainers, and some of these trainers are only trainers because they were misled into the industry too, and they thought that they were going to be making a certain amount of money, and they've come to find out they're not. And so they're told, well, if you want to make this much money, then you should train another student. So you have these people who are not teacher material, who are doing it because they're broke, they're frustrated. This is not what they thought trucking was going to be. Now they have to have somebody, a stranger, living on the truck with them, and this creates a lot of tension. And then of course you have people that are just simply on a power trip, and they just want an audience, and they want somebody in the truck that they can tell them, you know, what to do. So this is the environment that you're getting into, and you need to know this. There's also CDL schools that are not giving you enough hours to get hired at a carrier that you might be looking at. to go to. So you almost have to do this backwards. And it's unfortunate that there are no standards for CDL training. I'm serious. There isn't. So there's nothing to stop Fred's CDL school that'll give you 30 hours of training for $250, and you're going to go down and get your CDL down at the DMV. There's nothing to stop that from happening. And then you calling up a training carrier and saying, I got my CDL, and they say, well, do you have a certificate for 160 hours? And you say, no, it's for 30 hours. Well, then we're not going to hire you. You have to start all over from scratch. So you have to watch out for this. You have to research the carriers that you intend to do the finishing up of your training and find out what they require to hire you. And they might have an in-house school, which I'll talk about in a minute, or they might hire from preferred CDL schools, which you want to know, because in your area, if you're interviewing a non-preferable CDL school and then you spend $5,000 to go there and they say, well, we won't hire from that school. That's a good thing, but sometimes you see CDL schools who are not preferable and carriers still hire from them, and that's a whole another issue. So as you can see, this is a very complex problem. The second part of that is these in-house CDL schools. There is a post on our blog called Truck Carrier Warnings. We outline why you should eliminate some of these carriers right off the top before you go researching any further. And the reason the top 3 are on there is because they have a lease truck program associated with their training. Most of these people are going to be bankrupt and leave trucking in worse financial shape when they entered it. And they are going to have a non-dischargeable loan and all this debt. And they basically were driving enough to make the payment. And these carriers that do this control the miles, and they always make sure that you got to do something so that you never really can get ahead. You're never really going to get the title to that truck. So it's very manipulative. They look for people to exploit and sell them something that is simply not true. And we call it sharecropper trucking. It is really a horrible situation to get yourself into, and they advertise everywhere on the internet you go, and they'll take anybody with a pulse. So don't take it as a compliment when you get the approval letter, because they're going to approve anybody they can get to sign the dotted line and indoctrinate you from day one to get that lease truck. And you just got sold by a trainer that's a half-used car salesman that wanted to talk to you about the beauty of being an independent owner-operator during your whole training, and they're not even a real true owner-operator. They're selling you a bill of goods. So those kinds of schools have their in-house training. There's some that don't do the lease program that have in-house training. And the thing that you need to consider with that is you're tied to them. If they turn out to be a terrible carrier, if they treat you very poorly, if they manipulate things, if they shave pay off, they don't get you home, some of the conduct of these carriers is just very labor abusive. So you have to go and research these carriers first and see if it's something you can deal with. And then if you feel like, well, the complaints I'm seeing are stuff that I can deal with. Just because, you have to read a lot of these complaints, and you have to read between the lines, because a lot of truck drivers, a lot of student truck drivers and truck drivers that have been driving for a long time complain. When you have a carrier that shaves pay off of a lot of drivers, they're doing it on a grand scale. They're nickel and diming these drivers, and at first you're like, well, I'm not going to miss a nickel. I'm not going to miss $1. I'm not going to miss 50 cents. Well, it starts adding up. And I'm personally not the kind of person that ever penny pinches like that, Probably I should be. But I have seen them really blatantly take advantage of drivers that are just too busy to go over their settlement check like an accountant every month. So I just want you to really pay attention to what you're reading, and also know some of these carriers troll social networking sites, and they intimidate drivers who are trying to tell the truth about the carrier, and they also will act like they're actually drivers and start saying, oh, well, we're doing so good over there, we know the ropes, we know, it took us a long time, but we're doing really good now. So you really need to, what your instinct is telling you, like, this person sounds a little bit like totally different from all these 75 other people that are just saying this is the worst company ever, don't even waste your time. And these people are like, and they have really no background in the forums. They have just sort of this profile that's, kind of made up just to be like this. So pay attention to this stuff. Those are the things. I'm not saying that going to a company sponsored training is a bad thing, as long as there's no lease program being shoved down your throat during training. If you can't afford to pay it and you say, well, I'll be willing to work here for a year, it's a good idea to stay at your training carrier for a year. You don't want to go somewhere and have to quit and go somewhere else. You want to find somewhere good. So with that being said, that should be your first steps. You should, number one, start looking at training carriers. And read that post, truck carrier warnings. Learn the ones to stay away from, and learn the other ones that why or why not. You don't want to handicap yourself right out the gate. There's a lot of changes in trucking right now, a lot of new technology. So don't handicap yourself and go to a carrier that only has automatics. Even if they say, oh yeah, but we're using manuals again. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to get one in training. And it may mean that you have to wait, or you get stuck in a bind, and now you don't know how to do a logbook and you don't know how to drive a stick, and you're stuck at a carrier like that. You've just handicapped yourself and effectively dumbed yourself down to only have to be able to work at a carrier like that. That's why I frown on going to a carrier that has this kind of equipment. The next thing that you should think about is that some carriers only hire regionally. They're not going to hire from your state. So one of the things you need to call up these carriers and say, do you hire from my state? And if you're very flexible, which I was, and I know a couple other people that were, when they found a carrier they really wanted to go to, they just put their stuff in storage and they moved there, because you're basically going to be living on the road anyway. So if you don't have a bunch of stuff, just put all your stuff in storage. But what you want to find out from the carrier on a preliminary basis is, what are your hiring requirements? Do I need to come there with my CDL? Do you have an in-house training? What do I need to have a certain certificate hours from the CDL school if I need to come with one? You need to ask them about the home time, which they all lie, and the student pay, and what the future, if there's a team driving component to the training. You should not do a team driving component unless you're going with somebody you're going to team with, or your life is going to be miserable, especially if you're a female. It is just really difficult to find a good team partner, period. It doesn't matter what. It's hard even if you're married and you've been married for 20 years. So you're already sabotaging yourself. I just don't recommend it at all, especially for women. Here's your checklist for finding a CDL school. It's kind of going backwards. Start looking into training carriers where you're going to finish out your truck driver training. and call them up, find out if they hire from your area, find out if they will hire from the CDL schools you're thinking about in your area, or decide if you want to have their in-house training. Keeping in mind you don't want a team drive and that you do not want to get sucked into a lease program. Once you eliminate those out, who are the biggest advertisers on the internet, then you can start carving down the pack and finding out what are the other things that I must have here. Also, you want to find out what's their qualifications for this CDL school. Do I have to come with a certificate that says I completed so many hours? Then you want to make sure that that CDL school is going to give you that certificate for your drive time, your classroom time, and all of these things. You don't want to waste your money. You must understand that you are a walking dollar sign to not only the CDL school recruiters, but the truck recruiters at the carriers as well. They get incentives to hire you. So you're basically a little walking dollar sign. So you need to negotiate this just like you're going to buy a used car, because they are going to tell you anything you want to hear to get you in their seat so that they can benefit from having you look like they're, creating a job and getting a tax incentive and all of that stuff. You need to shop around. They're going to act like, oh, we have job placement. Everybody should have job placement. I mean, people are chomping at the bit to get new students just because students are an industry. Student truckers are an industry. They make money off students. So you have to pay attention to the way that people are talking to you and understand that you're their dinner. The other thing that, one final thing that I would like for you to do as you're researching all of this is check out the Truckers Report. They have a really good listing on there of good and bad carriers. And then you can read, and do know that there are carrier trolls that are executives that go on there and, look at people's profiles. Look at some of the things they've posted on other boards. If they're always defending the company and attacking people that are coming there with complaints, it's probably a trolling executive. If they're pretending like everything's hunky-dory, but all of these other complaints are like saying something different, and you're like, well, it's probably a troll. It's probably one of the executive trolls that's monitoring social networking sites, and so you have to do your research. When people say do your research, that means read all of these websites and realize that they're just trying to shoot fish in a barrel. So that's my advice for that.